Hey guys, thank y'all so much for joining us today for the message, either on the app or on our website. If this ministry has been a blessing to you, I would encourage you to join us in the process of not only growing the ministry, but growing our ability to reach this community. And one of the things that we're doing right now is actually beginning our student ministry building expansion to better reach those that we already have coming now, as well as the people who will be coming in the future. And so if you'd like to give today, you can either do that on our app or you can do it also on our website. And for your convenience, you can also set it to reoccurring if that's something you'd like to do. Hope you enjoy the message. Have a wonderful day.
It's something I want to shout first, and I think that we all ought to shout it. Romans chapter 8:28 says that we know that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. We know this. This is something that we know. But yet in our lives all the time, day by day, it seems like there is this problem and that problem. And if you listen to people talk, if you listen to me talk long enough, it seems like we want to get back over there and say, well, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. When all along we know this. We know that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. That God's hand is out there everywhere. And I look around and you see tragedies happen, and I say, Lord, how can this be? How can you find good, but yet we have that promise that in everything that you can find good. And today what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to run two stories parallel to each other. And the reason I want to say this first is because I don't want you to think for a minute that what I'm trying to say is, oh, woe with me, because I'm not. I would be dishonoring God. Now listen to this. We would dishonor God if we were to say everything's against me, if I'm a Christian. Now, if I'm not a Christian, go ahead and say it, because most likely you're right. But as a Christian, as a child of God, thank you for laughing, because I'm going to probably need it this morning. As a Christian, we would dishonor God. There's a verse in the Old Testament that rolls back into my mind and over and over, because I honestly say this to God all the time. It's, God, I'm too far out of the way to be used. Lord, I'm too far set back on the shelf to be used. And God would say, it's not for you. Who do you think you are? It's for my holy name's sake. God does his work for his holy name's sake. This is about God and less about you. But we're the one who has to walk this life. The day after Christmas, 1974, me and Debbie go and pick up a load of hay. Now, some of you have heard this story a little bit, and others probably never heard this. Me and Debbie go pick up a load of hay. My daddy and my little brother go pick up a load of hay. We have a big hay barn down in Grand Canyon. We're bringing it back to milk the cows for the cows here at our place. Isaac Carroll, the farm worker, is riding with my dad. Me and Dad pulled out on the road ahead of him. We're headed up here to put the hay out. We don't know anything. I never looked in my rearview mirror. I have no idea. My dad's not following me anymore. We go to the dairy, put the hay out. We go on to Keachai, get a load of feed from Long Star Feed. We come back around and I walked into Johnny May's store. And I can see the look on his eye when I walked in. It's like, oh my God, you don't know? He said, son, you got to go home. What are you doing here? You got to go home. And I know, I can still see his eyes. I still see him saying this to me. You got to go home. And I knew in my heart, I said, something bad has happened. Before I even get home, about where Earl Smith used to live, my Uncle Juba passed me and then flagged me down and stopped and said, what are you doing? You got to go home. Well, what I didn't know, that my dad had a head-on collision. And my daddy got killed that morning. It's the day after Christmas. Isaac Carroll, a farm worker, he got killed that day. 2 teenage kids that was riding with him got killed that day. And all of those things, I want you to say that there was never a time that I was mad at God about this. Because there's a promise out there that we know that all things will work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. That's a rule, that's a law that's stated in Scripture. But yet that was, 50 years ago now. 47 years ago, 47, whatever it is. Now I can look back and I can go, yeah, God, I can see how you worked all that thing. At the time, I didn't need nobody to tell me that. Within a few days, the bankers are all calling. They're going, you owe us money. Well, they just loaned us that money, October the 6th, my dad. And these sound like small numbers now because 2019, a dollar in 1974 is about $5 today. My mom and dad just signed a note, a $500,000 cow loan on October the 6th. They had the competition at the Ag Credit, at the PCAs, had a competition that year nationwide. Who can loan the most money? We were almost out of debt. The agents up there, they camped at my house for about 2 days at my mom and dad's house. Said, Mr. Frank, you got 2,000 acres of land. You only owe $160,000. You can put another 500 head of cows in if you lease some more lands down the road. And my dad did. Terrible mistake. Because we had no idea that the cattle market was going to break that next year. Cows, we paid $1,000 all day long for it. We sold for $100 all day long. We came out of that thing, we only hit principal by $40,000. Everything else was interest. The bankers came and they said this. They said, you got to sign the notes, Jay. There is no man in your family except you. The other people in my family had already filed papers against us, saying that we reject our inheritance and filed a suit against us. We were going in the ground quick. Our lawyer, Jackson B. Davis, told us this. He said, you gather up everything you can gather. In the middle of the night, you leave. And never turn your barren back. You just leave. Let the banks get it all back. And that's why I want to shout it out. Is that we know that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. At the time, you can't see any of it. And it may take you 40 years. It may take you 50 years looking in the rearview mirror thinking, what in the world happened? But the time comes when you'll see that God will deliver on that promise. A couple of years after all of these things happen, and listen, I'm on all kind of stuff right now. Where's Susu at? I'm on her elderberry sauce. I'm on her honey stuff. And I just started catching this week. So you have to go through this bad sounding voice. Sometime in this, I'm running all these stories together. I'm at the dairy barn. I got way in debt with Long Star Feed. I'm at the dairy barn and I look and there comes a white Impala Chevrolet coming up my driveway. Henry Richardson and Johnny Russo, the credit man from Long Star. Well, Johnny was the kind of the heavy of the deal. They drive up. They didn't get out the car. I can remember this. It singed into my brain. I walked over to the car. They rolled down the window and they said, Jay, we need you to just get in this back seat and let's talk for a little while. They already had life insurance papers. They already had a loan agreement for me to sign. And I started laughing at them. I thought, oh my gosh, ain't no way I'm signing all of this stuff. My banker, and I'm calling these names, and TC's here because he knows all of these. He knows all of these names. My banker, when we refinanced, praise the Lord for a man named Cecil Oliver who probably saved my life by refinancing us. He required a $500,000 policy on me. Now that sounds like small money now. That was a lot back then. That's a lot right now. He had a $500,000 policy on me against what I owed him, because now I didn't just owe mine and Debbie's debt, I owed all of the estate's debt. I had a $500,000 policy on me for Debbie to help pay out of debt. And my mama had a $500,000 policy on me to help pay me out of debt. We were putting up silage one day, and the silos clogged up. And that's a big hole that goes down through the middle that is formed by the unloader and the loader. And so it clogged up, so I had to clean that thing out. So we pulled the unloader shaft out the bottom, and there's a small little tray, a trough that you would back up into like this. And if you could, you'd reach down and try to get that to begin to fall out of there. Well, I had some Mexican boys working for me. And the littlest one, I said, you. Yeah, like, you. Slide up in there and hook that, pull, and get that thing. So he got in there and he slid up in there. I don't know what we would do without him. Slid up in there, and about this quick, he comes out. He goes, no. And I said, boy, y'all all get out of the way, and let me show you how to do this. I got down to the least amount of clothes that I need to, and I slid up in that shaft. Now, there's 1,300 tons of corn on top of me. That's 2.5 million pounds. Only thing between me and that is a 2 by 12, 24 inches wide across the shaft. And I slide up in there, and I get one breath of it. That corn makes a poisonous gas. Blake can tell me what it's called. I forget the name of it. It's a real orange, heavy gas. It comes down, it's heavy. And I took a breath of it. And for one moment, this thought went through my mind. I can pay out. I can pay the bank. I can pay our feed bill. I can pay everything I owe. We won't owe anything on our house. I won't owe anything, except the problem is I'm going to have to be dead to be there. And as fast as I could do it, guys, after that thought, because I only had one more breath to go, as fast as I could do it, man, I was shimmying out of that hole. And when I got out, I went straight to the phone. I called Farm Bureau Insurance, and I said, cancel them. Cancel those policies. Cancel PCA. Cancel my mom. If they want policies on me, I'm paying for my own policies to kill my own self. In that sense, I'm saying I am. I mean, I got out of there quick. About a week later, my mom called. She said, oh, Jay. He said, what are you doing? She said, I just got notification from Farm Bureau that you dropped insurance. What if something happens to you? I said, Mama, something did happen to me. Something almost happened to me. I said, you can't do that. Y'all can't do that to me. I'm worth too much dead, and I ain't worth much alive. And that's why I want to keep shouting this verse, is that we know that all things work together for good, for those who are called according, those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Listen, God is working something out there. Johnny Russo and Henry, they come up to the barn in that white Impala. I don't know if it was that night or the next night, but you know how a dream will affect you when you see something one day. And this is one of those few times, it's the only one time I've dreamed a lot of crazy stuff in my life. This is the only one time I've ever dreamed anything I'll count that was good, that was true, that maybe was God. And it's almost so real that it appears that it really happened. I was in my shop. I had a little shop at the old dairy barn on the east side of the highway, and I was in my shop working there one day. And I looked coming down the road, and what's coming down that road? There's that white Impala driving down the driveway. And there are the people in that Impala. And the same thing, they drive up. This time they get out and they walk over to me, and they say, we need to talk. And about that moment, I looked in the pasture, and a man was walking towards me. And I looked at him, and I said, you don't need to talk to me now, you can talk. It was my daddy walking towards me. I said, you can talk to my daddy. He walked right up to me, and he never looked at them. He simply put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, son, you got to deal with this. And he turned around and he walked away. I think that is what kicked my butt into gear of dealing with. Listen, we had, my dad, if you'll notice, along the highway, starting from about Hall, there's the Thompsons there. The next is David King. The next is Dr. Asaph. The next is the Siegfried family. The next is Taylor's family. Those were all part of my place. We were cutting it off. I was going like, whatever we got to do, we got to get this thing over with, get this debt thing over with. It has taken almost all of my life up until about 7 or 8 years ago. Those are things, and listen, I'm saying that, this is like a testimony, but this is nothing new to any of you. Every one of you have gone through something exactly like this. And so don't say, well, Jay's just talking about himself. Listen, I would insult God if I were to say for a second that God meant anything for bad for me, because God has meant all of this for good. Now, at the time, I didn't see how any of it could be. But in the rearview mirror, I can see that it's all worked out now. And it's taken us a good lifetime. And don't be surprised if it doesn't take a lifetime for some of you. In 1999, and that's why I'm going to weave these stories together, this month, exactly 20 years ago, right now, me and Deb stopped at Applebee's in town, and I said, babe, I got to talk to you. You know, anytime somebody tells you we got to talk, now when somebody tells me that, oh, I need to talk to you, and I'm going, oh no, I mean, I don't care I don't know what I did, and whatever I did, I'm sorry. I mean, I hate those words, we need to talk. But I told Deb, I said, we need to talk. And we were up at Applebee's January. And I said, Debbie, I'm fixing to tell you a story that I never told anybody. And these are the two stories that weave together. Because in one part of your life, things falling apart. There's other parts of your life, things can be falling apart over there. There's lots of areas of your life. I said, babe, I got to tell you something that happened when I was 14. I was at Gloucester Baptist Church. We was having a revival. And the preacher gave the invitation for people to walk down to rededicate their life or be saved. I said, I got up to go rededicate my life. And before I could get to the front, from the pew, before I got to the preacher, God said something to me. I said, I heard God. God said, we have something to do late in your life. 9 little words. We have something to do late in your life. Well, I was 14. It could have been 13. It could have been 15. I think it was 14. I thought about that probably every day from then till now. I never got far from church. I mean, I wasn't no count for nothing, but I never got far from church. I taught Sunday school forever before this thing happened. I was a deacon. We were on different boards. And I would ask God, I said, God, what did that mean? I was doing stuff. We all doing stuff. I said, Lord, what did it mean? I was going on the river. I'd done the river 10 years already. He said, you hadn't seen it yet. You haven't seen it yet. And every time it was that you haven't seen this thing yet. Well, in 1999, God began to say, it's time. It's time. What you heard when you were 14, it's time that it was never you, Jay. People look up there and they'll say, you, Jay. I said, it never was you, Jay. It was always we, Jay. We got something to do. I said, Deb, God said we had something to do late in my life, and I know what it is now. God's asking me and you to step out. He's asking us to say goodbye to Gloucester Baptist Church. And he's saying that he's going to form a church around us, our family. And Debbie looked at me like, what? That's your church? My friends are there. My family is there. And you're saying we're going to leave? And she's like, man, this is what she said. I can quote her. She'll be here next service. I'll be in trouble. Why didn't you tell me this before we got married? I said, babe, I didn't know. I said, I didn't know. God didn't give me any details. Sometimes people say, well, you had this vision for life. No, I didn't know what it was. And this is what I told Debbie. I said, I'll fight this thing, babe. I said, this was in January. I said, I'll fight it. I'm going to fight God on this. Because listen, at that time, I was totally confused. I knew what God was saying, but I knew that everything that I did or said was wrong where I was at. And I hope y'all don't mind me telling the whole story here. I mean, if I got objection to that, it's just like, wow. And listen, I'd ask the Lord, I said, Lord, just hold me back. I shouldn't tell it. But we had a neighbor. I was on the building committee, and this is how I asked God. I said, God, show me a sign. Listen, I was so confused at church. I didn't know what to do. I asked a pastor in town, Brother Hall, it's at Baptist Tabernacle. I called him one day. I said, Brother Hall, God has said, step out and a church is going to be formed. I said, but I don't know what to do. I'm totally confused because my emotions now are engaged. I mean, I am in a war. And this is what he told me. He said, go to Gideon's. He said, do just what Gideon did. He said, Lord, if this is really you, show me a sign. And so I did. I asked God. I said, God, show me a sign. And let it be so big I can't misunderstand it, God. We had a big old tree. And this is where some of y'all know the story. Because you're going to hear it wrong if you hear it anywhere else except from me. We had a big old tree next to Mr. Marvin Long's yard. Mr. Marvin, it wasn't on our land. It was on an alley from when they created the township of Gloucester. It belonged to the parish. Mr. Marvin said to me, he said, Jay, he said, that tree, you're on the building committee. You're on the building committee. Don't let them cut the tree down. I went, no problem, Mr. Marvin. It's not going to get cut down. No way. He said the tree was on his fence row, but yet it was on the alleyway. He said that tree, and it's on the west side of his house. He said that tree shades my whole yard. I said, no way, Mr. Marvin, we wouldn't do that. The very next committee meeting we had, we voted, and I said, listen, I've already given you my word. We're not going to cut the tree down. And we voted to cut the tree down, except for me. And so they said, well, we're going to get it cut down for free. We got El Paso Gas is going to bring their equipment up there, and they're going to dig it up. We've got connections. Well, the next day, I got on the phone, called El Paso Gas in Houston, and I said, thank you, but no thank you. And they went, my gosh, man, we didn't know we was going to get in the middle of a hornet's nest. And so they said, well, we won't be up there. About a week later, I know I have you a scripture on there, Luke 23. I'd asked God to show me a sign. And God gave me a verse. And this is it. I struggled with this verse for weeks. It said, for if they will do these things in a green tree, what will be done to a dry tree? Now God is working out something over here. All things work out together for good for those who love the Lord and call him to his purpose. Listen, I am in distress. And God says, I got a verse for you. And so I'm asking people, I said, what does this mean? They'll cut down a green tree, but what happens to dry trees? Mr. Marvin told me, he said, son, don't let them cut this tree down. I'm not, Mr. Marvin. Have any of y'all ever seen the movie Apostle? Have y'all ever seen that? I told him, I said, look, I'm going to take my Bible and I'm going to put it in front of the bulldozer and I'm going to stand there and say, run over me. Well, the Tuesday of the following week, I walk into Johnny Mae's to have some coffee. My Uncle James looks at me and says, son, I thought you told me you wasn't going to let them take that tree down. I said, I'm not, Uncle James. He said, well, then you ought to go take a look up there right now. And I drove up, and there was this huge track hoe, and there was this huge tree laid over with the root ball all attached, laid over like that. And I went, wow. That was God's sign to me. That wasn't anybody trying to do anything. I said, God, show me a sign. And in that moment, God said, there's your church, Jay. That's what I've been trying to tell you, Jay. He said, I got more green trees that are turning brown in the community. He said, I've got more people at home than are in church. It's not about you in a church. It's about me providing a place that people can come that are in danger of being cut down, of turning dry, of blowing away, and they're my children. This is the call for our church. If you look around, you're not going to see a lot of suit and ties except for this one right here, I guess, this morning. Most likely what you're going to find are people who have been hurt and have been cut down and thought to be destroyed, where God is saying, I want you to live. I want you to live. All I had to do was to get through the next 2 weeks. I didn't say a thing to anybody. That tree's down, I'm over with. That tree went down, cut me down at the same time. I'm useless now there. But that's fine because now I'm free. For the first time probably in my religious life, I had a guy ask me in Texas the other day. He invited me and Connor over to have a meal with him, and we'd go in their little house, and he's saying, man, I don't know what your religious convictions are, but I'm smoking my cigarette and I'm drinking. I said, man, I don't care. We're free. we're free. He said, this is the calling now of a church. The tree shaded a man's yard. The tree now is taken away. That day, all we had to do was get through with our river trip. I didn't say anything to anybody. I just resigned everything I was doing. Next 2 weeks, I didn't say a word. Took our river trip. That last day of the river trip, I had a little kid came out, accepted Christ, Tracker Gory. And I thought when he came up out of the water, I thought, normally right here is when I'd say, hey, come to church with me. Because I taught the youth boys Sunday school. And I thought, but I don't have no place to say to come. So after the river trip, I got his dad, Richard. And I said, Richard, this is what's going to happen. This is what's happening. Richard was our first people to come to church with us. And then it just began to build and to build and to build, and it became a little church. And I look around this now. When we built this building here, I had people say, man, what are you doing? I said, hey, I don't know. If nobody comes, we'll stack hay in it. And let me confess right now to you, I could not have brought us to where we're at. That's exactly right. I did not bring us to where we're at. 10 years ago, God called Josh out to touch a new era, a new generation of people. I couldn't have done this. I don't have it. I don't have it. That's what people say, man, are you preaching today? I said, man, the best I can do is just get up there and do a little talking. And I can't hardly do that this morning, can I? That afternoon, I went to, the next Sunday at church, I said goodbye to my Sunday school class. They were the only ones that deserved for me to speak to them. And a few of those actually go to church now with us here. And I said goodbye to them, and I walked out, and Debbie was waiting out in the car, and we drove up to Baptist Tabernacle to Brother Hall's church. He don't really know me. I haven't seen him since then, and that's been 20 years ago. And I walked in, and before we get to the pew, because the service had already started, he said this, Genesis chapter 50. These were the days of miracles for us. God was confirming. He said this, because this is what he was preaching. He said, they thought it was evil. They thought evil against me, but God meant it for good. To bring to pass this day to save much people alive. He was preaching on Jacob and Joseph. And Joseph, and then he drops back, if you'll drop back over to 49. Then he turned around and he said this, and I thought, my gosh, am I hearing this? God just spoke this to me. It's what you call confirmation out here. And he turned around and he said, and this is what Joseph, when he was blessing his son Jacob, he said, in Joseph, a fruitful bough, a fruitful limb, a fruitful branch, a green tree, even a fruitful bough by a well whose branches grow over the wall. And he began to say, he said, man, if you've been cut down, he said, don't die. Put your branches over the wall and keep on growing. And God was going, see, this is what I'm trying to tell you. I got more people out there that want to grow and want to live than are sitting in churches today. Build something. Do something. Listen, he had to kick me in the butt to get me to do this. When I tell people, I said, nobody stood in the way of this more than me. I was hearing God for months. And I was going, no way, God. I waited all of my life to hear what you told me when I was 14, and this is it. I ain't no way I'm going to do this. And God, listen, I'll tell you what, when you start fighting with God, God will end up winning. We said goodbye. That night, my mom called me. My mom called. She's lived in Houston. The grapevine travels fast. And I can quote her. At 9 o'clock, I'm on the phone with my mother, and she says, oh, my God, Jay, what have you done? She said, I don't care what you've done. You put your tail between your legs, and you get back down there to that church, and you say, I'm sorry, and you're going to be a good boy. That's our church. And I said, Mom, you know something's been going on with me all of my life. I may not have been no good, but you know something's going on. She said, you must think that y'all going to build a church. I said, Mom, the thing is, I know where it's supposed to be. I'd drive by here every day and I'd raise my hand to this hill. For months, when I would drive by here, I'd raise my hand to this hill. And I said, Lord, there's supposed to be a church up there. I know that's what you want to do. I know it. She said, well, and I didn't have a penny, and my mom didn't have. That's the reason she's in Houston trying to earn a living so we could keep going down the road. She said, I can't touch it, and she can't touch it. At 11:30 that night, my phone rings again, and this is what she says. She said, you're not going to believe what I'm fixing to tell you. She said, a man named Howard Cheek, which lives 4 houses down, after I got through talking to you, I went down and told him that you said there was 7.5 acres of land that could be bought for $50,000. And this quick, he said, I am supposed to buy that land. That's on the first day of our journey. Day 1, God now, this is a time of miracles, I promise you. On day 1, Howard Cheek, a man that had never said thank you to properly. I called him, I said, what do I say, Mr. Howard? He said, you don't say anything. I said, my gosh, Mr. Howard, what can I say? What can we do? I said, you're just late. He said, I'm just trying to lay some treasure up into heaven. I went, oh my gosh. The next day, being Monday, at the cafe down in Grand Canyon, I leave about 11 o'clock, come up here and talk to Jackie Lansdale, who lives right here, who owned this land, and the land where the little houses are back here. And I said, I want to offer y'all $50,000 for that. She said, you've waited too late, Jay. There was a sign out there that had already fallen down. She said, you've waited too late. We've lost this in bankruptcy. She said, but I'll check. I'm back down at the cafe in Grand Canyon. 12 o'clock, the phone rings. She went, oh my gosh, Jay. She said, today is the last day. Knowles Realty was fixing to get this land back, and they would have never been up for sale again for us. She said, today is the last day, and the bankruptcy judge says, if you will sign a pledge of $50,000 right now today, you stop the bankruptcy on my house. She said, Jay, this is a miracle. She says, I get to keep the 18 acres. That's where they developed over here. And y'all get the 7.5 acres. I said, send it on down. Send it on down. I signed it. 6 weeks later, or 6 months, I forget now which one it was. It cleared the bankruptcy court. They cashed a check. And this land came to us. All of that happened basically on the first day. If it had been one more day, it would have been one day too late. What I'm here to say is, and to shout it out to every one of you, because y'all have all gone through the same things that I'm talking about, is we know that if God is for you, nobody can be against you. Nobody can be against you.